US GDP is a fraud. Trying to determine the value of a country is a difficult task, and this figure is a way in which countries attempt to assess the current state of the economy as well as future projections. This is an excellent opportunity to lie about the truth. This is the order of operations. When an economy is suffering, make quarterly projections of GDP quite high. Next, as the weeks move on, slowly revise those expectations lower until the official numbers have to come out. Hide most of the important indicators in order to allow the figure to seem higher. Use accomplices in the mainstream media to project propaganda about the economy. Economies around the world are suffering, and the GDP statistic is not an accurate display of the truth. But that's why you came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we will talk about some charts and other things that show how the government lies about the GDP and how it's all interconnected with the general outlook of the economy. Let's begin with this here. Something that I've shown many times before, I'm sure you've seen it, but the Atlanta Fed has this indicator called the GDP Now. It's the real GDP forecast for 2016 quarter one. And I'll just point out a few things here. Number one, you get the shaded area in blue, which is the range of the top and the bottom of the forecasts. And you can see, though, there's a general consensus there, as well as the blue chip consensus being the blue line going through that. And what we have here is what happens in all cases, that it gets revised downward as the weeks go on. Now, I'll actually cover it in another video, in the next video possibly, where I actually get into the fact that what's making the GDP in the positive territory to begin with? We know the economy is not doing well. Let me just give you a hint. It's something to do with Obamacare. But let me just move on here with the Atlanta Fed GDP Now forecast is actually the green line. And you can see that over the past few weeks, it has declined considerably. And this is supposed to be a more accurate indicator of what the GDP is. Let's not even get into the fact that the numbers themselves are fake. That's a whole different story. But at least we can see that they do revise them downward as the time goes on. For those who don't know, just a quick little, spend 1 minute on this here. The GDP, the gross domestic product, basically is the total value of a country's economy. And, if you're interested in this, I have a video in my free eCourse there if you'd like to see that. There's a link in the description. GDP, and this is, of course, an overly simplistic view of it. This is a diagram from my book. GDP equals government spending, consumption and investments, and exports. And you take all of these and you actually add them all up. That's basically your GDP. So it's how much the government is spending, how much they get on their exports, their investments, all these things add up together to make the GDP. But along the way, perhaps maybe exports are down, maybe consumption isn't as high as it once was, and these GDP numbers begin to drop. So there are two major factors here. You need to get the propaganda out there. You need to make up crazy excuses for why this is happening. Cold weather, hot weather, no weather, anything you want. And then you also have to fudge the numbers. And they've done this so well actually in Europe, where we have seen actually, I can't believe it myself, but including illegal conduct such as prostitution and illegal drug activity as part of the GDP. This is when you know things are really bad. This is the US quarterly GDP statistics from 2009 up until the present, and they've clearly fluctuated. But for the last 3 quarters, we can see that there is quite the decline. In fact, there seems to be a trend over the past year or more where it's on a downtrend. But this is all with their manipulated numbers. So my message now is, don't take the actual GDP statistic too seriously. And I'll mention more about that later. The US current account balance as a percentage of the GDP. The amount of deficit spending that these nations do is unbelievable. In fact, it's at a rate that is a record high. And that number fluctuates, but you can see that in general, record high amounts of deficit spending. They do this whenever there is a war. They use deficit spending, and no matter how much taxation comes in, literally every single quarter, there is, the numbers come out. I always show you, generally CNS News covers this. It keeps breaking records over and over and over again. And of course, that doesn't seem to matter to some people. There's another diagram here, US current account. And this is just to show you the trend line. Obviously, more deficit spending is the way that they're going to continue on. And you look at the way nations do business in between each other, and it's not really so positive for the outlook when you have a country like China, which is basically sending all its goods to the US, and the US is sending a lot of IOUs back. And then we move to shift gears for a second here. Realtor.org. Existing home sales fizzle in February. Now they talk about how housing prices have been up, but this short period of time it's been down. I have to disagree overall because of the way that they manipulate things. Now if you look at it, okay, let's look at Manhattan. Obviously, real estate prices doing very well overall. But when you look at the nation as a whole, you get a different picture. The overall demand for buying is still solid entering the busy spring season, but home prices and rents are outpacing wages, and anxiety about the health of the economy are holding back a segment of would-be buyers. The only reason why they're buying is because, number one, rent prices have gone up considerably. At the same time, you have interest rates that are very low. So people think, why not just get into it? Why not ride the wave? The median existing home price for all housing types in February was $210,000. Now, if you compare that to what you see in certain regions in the US, that's a big, big difference. And then compare it to Canada, it's a big difference as well. February's price increase marks the 48th consecutive month year-over-year gains. That's very interesting. But the prices did come down considerably during the bust that occurred. You have the inventory, what I believe, crisis that is being hidden. You had subdivisions, entire subdivisions being built in areas like Las Vegas, around Nevada, in the area, and basically that laid, I believe it was 20 million, if I'm not mistaken, 20 million homes laying empty. You cannot fulfill that need, 20 million homes, and yet, there's ways to manipulate this. Like I said, if you keep increasing rents at the same time you bring interest rates down, you're going to have this, basically people flooding into the housing market when they shouldn't be. US county level affordability trends becoming more and more unaffordable as time goes on. Why? Because the wages aren't keeping up. And that's just the way it is. They can fudge the numbers any which way, but the truth is that wages are not keeping up. And we've seen that going back decades. And, it's hard to see from these charts here, but the percentage of counties less affordable than their historic norms, and then also the number of counties. Use whatever statistics you want, but you can go back, look at the prices of the homes, look at the wages people were making, and the two just do not correspond. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. If you want to look through the book, you can head over to Amazon, and they have a look inside feature. It's going to allow you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care. Now, for those who are still here, I want to thank you for all your support that you gave me on the previous video. I did mention about the Patreon page, which is basically a donations or support to my work. So I got positive feedback. So I decided to do it and set it up. I hope I did it correctly, in fact, but I set it up. I'm going to put a link down below. And, I don't want to ask anyone for anything, but it's down below for those who wish to support me. And, I'm very grateful for anything that I do get. If all you can give is a thumbs up on my videos, then, I really appreciate it so much. So anything that you can do, if all that is a thumbs up, then I'm very happy, very pleased, and appreciative of that. Thank you and take care.